Welcome, everyone. My name is Jordan Bain. This podcast is called Unveiling. I'm a certified international Kabbalah instructor, senior guide, healer, teacher, and ritual master with the Modern Mystery School. My passion is to help people connect with their soul, live their true purpose, and to find joy. On this podcast, we have deep conversations about what exists behind the veils of everyday reality and how to understand the mysteries of life. My guest today is Zuyapa Jackson. She's a spiritual healer, guide, and ritual master with the Modern Mystery School. She's been sharing this work of the lineage for 9 years now. With almost 20 years overall experience in helping individuals in both small and large organizations get clear on their soul signature, she helps people restructure their core energy around that and create more dynamic outcomes with less effort. So welcome, Zuyapa, and thanks for being a guest today.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah. So, our topic today is change and an open heart. And this, to me, we discussed this topic a couple of times, and I was like, wow, that's really broad. How can we focus that? Because that kind of encompasses everything, because the heart is the center of all change, the center of our being as humans in this physical body and life. And I'm really curious what change means to you as a person, as an initiate, as a human being. Like, what is change?
What is change? Change is self-loving. I think I mentioned it's evolution. It's evolutionary. It's bravery. It's life. I mean, I think we're changing all the time. Whether from a cellular level that our bodies are always regenerating themselves. We're also like literally constantly changing. Even though on some level, I think a lot of times we resist that change, whether it's like, for example, our cells changing, but we don't want to age. Like things in life are changing, but we don't want to move. So change is natural. It's just a part of our whole story being here on Earth. So I think the question is, how do we embrace it? And how do we, not only embrace it, but like use it as a tool for our joy, for our well-being, for the creation of our lives, and not feel so afraid or bogged down by the concept of change.
So with our hearts, why is that so essential? What's the core essence of change with the heart? We can just go right there.
Change that comes from the heart is evolution, I think. Change that comes from somewhere outside of us, or maybe from our minds, or maybe from some, I almost want to say random thing that we're trying to reach, or some goal that we want, is changing.
There is random change.
There is random change. Yeah. We don't always control it, and we sometimes have to go with it, and it turns out to be something great. But being able to have a soft heart and a heart that's open to guidance, to wisdom, to the truth that's within us helps us, I think, align with the change that is meant for us.
So what has been your relationship with change? What has that been in your life?
Well, I've changed a lot. I say that with a laugh, but I mean, I've changed a lot, and I've changed many times. I grew up in New Orleans. I moved to Colorado, which was a huge change. Moved back to New Orleans, moved across the world to South Africa. I've worked as a model. I've worked in corporate. I'm in, spiritual work now. So I've personally changed a lot, which also means that everything about my life had to change. The people that I relate to, the way I relate to myself has to change. The way I relate to my family has to change. And yeah, I think I'm constantly changing. I just moved from New York to New Orleans, which is also a huge change, and especially, coming home and then also realizing what hasn't changed.
What hasn't
The
changed?
reason I haven't changed. You know,
Mm,
I realize that I feel so at home here. I'm like, oh, that hasn't changed. But
mm,
sometimes, I guess maybe on some level we could forget who we are in that process of
mhm.
changing. So maybe I guess the question is, what's really changing? What's
Yeah.
really changing and what stays the same? And then maybe that's where we get back to the heart, because what's in our heart is really us. And that doesn't change. So maybe it's the outward expression that changes, that we have to be willing to adapt and
Mhm.
coming back. I don't know what it is.
You were breaking up there a little bit. You're saying adapt, and then you cut out.
Oh, what did I say? Um, I believe I was saying that I was talking about getting back into the heart, getting into the heart.
Mhm,
And if you can really connect with it, with what's in your heart, then that doesn't change. The essence of you, the core of you, the real truth of your being in your heart doesn't change, but the outward expression changes.
mm,
And being adaptable to the way we relate, the way we express in the world and the way that we do things and go about things is what changes, but we don't really change. The essence of who we are is who we are. And I think that's what lives in the heart. And so
mm,
if we can keep cultivating and excavating and healing, which I think is what this lineage is so brilliant for, if we can keep healing all of these things in our outward expression, then we really know what's in
mhm,
that heart. So that when we're changing, it's a change that's changing
mm.
us into ourselves. It's changing us into our truth and our brilliance and ways that we can continue expressing that authentically.
Yeah. I was having dinner with a friend last night, and we were talking about people changing. We were talking about, like, becoming a better person.
Mm,
What does that involve, becoming a better person? And he was saying, he asked me the question, he's like, "Have you always been pure of heart?"
mm.
And I was like, "That's a great question." Like,
Good
how
question.
do I even answer that? I can look back at, like, my journal from high school, and I can see intentions that were there to do what I do now as a healer. And I can also see the pain that I was in high school or in college, and I kept a really, really good journal for probably from about age 15 or 16 until, like, 25. Pretty much like a daily journal entry. So I can look at those journals. I still have them. It's like they're in a bag here because I just moved last year and haven't even stacked them away in my closet yet. But have I always been pure of heart? And I was like, yes and no. And, like, something in my heart did change. And it mostly changed through initiation,
Mhm.
through the mystery school tools. But that wasn't overnight. That was a really long process. That was, from the time I got initiated in 2005, I took like 5 years of working on myself before I felt, like, pure enough in my heart to really say I wanna go to Healers Academy and really serve other people full time. Now, a lot of people go to Healers Academy and they have no intention of serving other people full time by doing life activations,
Right.
but you don't need that at all. But for me, I took it really, really seriously, and that's how I approached it. So, there's something changing in my heart during that time. But was always there?
Which part? The desire, the purity?
That desire to serve? Was that, like, there dormant as a seed all the time? Or did that seed get planted at some point?
Mm.
And I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? Because we threw this one back and forth last night, and we didn't come to any conclusions, so
Yeah.
maybe you and I can throw this back and forth for a minute here and talk
I
about
do think it was there. I think it was there.
that.
I know
Mhm.
for myself it was there, and I can share my story of how I came to it as well. But I do think it
Yeah,
was there because there's lots of different ways of serving.
yeah.
So when we come to the fact that we want to serve, even if we do go to Healers Academy, there's still many ways of doing it. So the way
Mhm.
that we come to as that expression is probably what was already there. or even if it's not the exact thing, it's some signature about it that aligns with that purity that was in you. Like the way that you're doing it aligns with, you know, something that you felt when you were there, when you were younger.
Yeah. What is
That's
that story for you?
Yeah. So I think about this sometimes too, because we can, you know, the purity of our hearts, again, is really connected with that, like that essence of us, you know, the essence that isn't the wounded person. It's not the person who's out in the world, like has to hustle and try and do all these things. Who's not dealing with all the relationships and all the dynamics. That purity is
Hmm.
really us. So I do think we've had it all
Hmm.
along. And even when we want to help and we want to serve, before we really, really learn how to do it properly, we're just doing it. And we're making
Hmm.
mistakes. And we, you know, are still hurting other people and hurting ourselves and, you know, doing all these things. But it may not look like we're pure. It may look like we have problems and we're issues and we're not good people. But it's because there's something in deep within that's trying.
Hmm.
And we're trying to do it from whatever way we can relate at that time. I kind of call that like how we exist on arcs. And every time we
Hmm.
shift arcs, the way that we relate and express changes, so the way our service can change. Which to me, initiations are like how you jump arcs. You know, that's what I always tell people. Um,
Hmm.
but I do think that purity is there. It's just like, you know, when we talk about, you know, when we want to heal and figure out our purpose and what we're really good at, the first thing someone's going to ask you is, what did you really want to do as a child? You know, what
Right.
did you do when you play? How did you
Right.
play? It's because like we can find all those seeds when we were most pure. And then
Hmm.
that's when healing comes in, you know, and all the processes, and especially Kabbalah is really great for that, to really start to unravel all the things we built up around that pure essence of us.
Hmm. For
And so
sure.
change is a magic, right? Like change can be the magic that we use to reinvent ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Got a question from someone who's watching right now, and they're asking, repeat something about Healers Academy. So Healers Academy is something that Suyapa and I were just discussing around like the second level of initiation in the mystery school. And first level is a 2-day weekend we call Empower Thyself. Second level is academy we call Healers Academy, where you learn to do several different types of healing modalities that we offer in the school. So that's what we're weaving that in. It's a deeper commitment to serving and to having more tools to do a specific type of service to people to help them wake up more on a spiritual and multidimensional level in their life. So great question. Yeah. So I'd love to hear more about that story for you, Siapa, as to like what brought you to embrace change more. Like, were you always someone who was embracing change? Was that just like in your sort of DNA blueprint from day one? Or is it something that you had to learn? Like,
Sort of.
and
Yes.
either way, how did that go for you?
Yeah, sort of it was, but I think the way that I did it was very different. I would just kind of, you know, I had like reckless abandon, so to speak, and I would just like dive into something if it felt right, you
Hmm.
know. And I don't know. I think it was okay. I think it was okay. It didn't, you know, do, I don't know, maybe not too much harm, but I definitely have a different approach to change now. You know, I mean, I still do, but I'm just more conscious and more aware. You know, I think as I'm more
Hmm.
aware of what I'm doing with my life and where I want to go, then
Hmm.
you know, if that change serves me, then I'm all
Yeah.
in it. It doesn't matter if I think it's going to be hard, if it's going to be painful. I mean, it does matter because I think that's also a great segue. It's not always easy. You
Sure.
know, and that's the point to come back to, that it gets really painful sometimes too, but there's also ways of embracing that. But yeah, okay, so my most recent change was coming to New
Yeah.
Orleans, right? I
Right.
can talk about this. So
That was fun. I want to hear about that. Because when you
yeah.
first went, I was like, you were like, "I'm just gonna move down here," and I was like, "You're gonna stay down there, I think."
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah, I
know,
remember
I'm
I
just
called
it's
you,
an
and
itch.
you and Sophie had that long conversation. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I always knew I was gonna come back home to work.
Mm.
Right.
Mhm.
But I didn't really want to live here, to be honest. I couldn't see myself coming back to New Orleans, but I knew there was something in me that I really wanted to serve here. I was doing so many good things like in New York and with people that I didn't even know. I really wanted to come home and be able to offer all of this tools, the light, all of it to my
Mhm.
family and people that I know here in my homeland, right? But I
Mhm.
wasn't ready. So I wasn't coming. And even though like it would come into my mind, I would be like, no, no, not happening. And that actually went on
Mhm.
for a couple of years, to be honest with you.
Mhm.
And I
I
fought it.
believe
And
it.
then, uh, I think it was you're frozen.
Yeah, you froze there a
Can
little
you
bit
hear
too. I
me?
I
Okay.
I was heard what you said, that you fought it and then you started to cut out,
Right.
so.
I fought it and I froze like the screen just did. and then,
Mhm.
and then my sisters, well, there was a time when I was changing apartments in New York, and my sisters called me as I was like trying to get this beautiful apartment, the one that I really wanted. My sisters called and they said, "Hey, can you come down to help, with our parents?" And so I thought to myself, okay, I'll go down and help with the parents, look for an apartment while I'm there, then I'll come back to New York. And so I landed here last
Is this like
year. It
this is
was
a
like
year ago? Yeah,
a year ago
yeah,
now. Yeah.
yeah,
And yeah, I didn't plan on staying.
right.
And, I spent like months in my sister's living room and it was uncomfortable. We had our parents, it was the middle of COVID, so everybody was stuck in the house. Like, I ended up having surgery. I had like all kinds of health issues. It was so uncomfortable. I was suffering last year. Like, let's be clear.
Mhm.
But
Goodness.
it was a change I didn't ask for. But then I had to sit with myself and realize, and I even said this to Miss Dave, I was like, I had to realize, like, I asked for this. I
Right,
wanted to come home and work. I was hearing it, but fighting it. So I made that change painful for myself,
right.
right? And then I came, and when I finally realized that, and I was like, okay, you know, I'm here. I can do something here. This is where I'm going to be. I relaxed and things unfolded.
Mhm. That's really
So
important.
it's super to relax into it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's been lots of things. I remember being in New York, and I mean, there was times where I was just on the floor, like crying, like the lowest of the low. Like, what am I going to do? What's next? Because things were changing. Like I
Mm.
said, I work as a model, and I've done consulting. But sometimes when those things shift, and you don't know what's next, you really don't know like what to do, because we still have to live in the world. We still have bills to pay and life that we want to live and relationships. And sometimes when we lose those unexpectedly, you have to also fall so that you can stand up again. And I
Yeah, we
think
get
that's
oriented to those things.
helpful. I'm sorry, what did you say?
We get oriented to those things that
Right.
we think define us, and then when they fall apart, we can fall apart.
That's right. But in the
And that's
falling
really
apart is where the light rises.
mhm. That's where the heart comes back in or
That's right.
back online.
That's right.
There's so many ways that we live with a lot of I think a lot of people tolerate, like, a lot of obstacles in their life for a long time, and they don't realize because they may not have the light, they may not have the awareness, and I don't mean light in a judgmental or specific way, I just mean, like, light equals awareness.
That's right.
When you don't have enough light, you're just not aware. It's
That's
not
right.
some crazy esoteric concept like, "Oh, you don't have the light." It's like, if I don't have enough light in my life, I'm not aware of this area of my life over here. And we all lack the light in different parts of us.
That's right.
This part of being human. It's like, well, over there, I don't know that part of me. So there's not enough light over there for me to see it. Just like if
That's
I go
right.
in my basement and it's dark, I don't know what's down there.
That's right.
Maybe I remember what's down there, but maybe it's changed because I allowed other people into my subconscious mind in my basement.
That's
Maybe
right.
I allowed random things into my basement. And there's critters living down there, like
That's
chewing on the
right.
electrical cables. And
That's
then
right.
it's not working so great anymore. But if I don't have the light, I don't know.
That's right.
I don't know what's happening there. So I think a lot of times, like you were saying, that brings us back to this concept of random change. And although Hermetic principles say nothing is truly random, everything falls under cause and effect, there's often times when we don't have enough light, there's so many factors that we're not aware of that it seems random.
That's right.
Technically, it's all operating according to a system of universal laws, but if you're only aware of 1% of the laws and you can only see 1% of that 1%, everything could seem very random to you.
That's right.
And you wouldn't really know how it's coming in. And you certainly wouldn't be a conscious part of that creation process in a significant way if you have that little awareness.
That's right.
And the problem with humans is that we just don't know. We don't have the awareness. So then we come across to the universe, and I say this lovingly to myself, to you, to everyone watching, to all humans, like we come across to the universe as being pretty stupid.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're end up making decisions that are we're not well informed to make the best decisions. So to have an awareness that you want something and then to fight it is really natural for a human, because there's like maybe we have all these little ducks that we think are in a row for a certain way of life. And then there's that seed of desire, like I want to go do this. And maybe we don't realize how powerful that seed of desire is. But
It's
it's
so
gonna
powerful.
it's gonna burn up all those other little ducks that we had in a row.
That's right.
To take us where we want to go. And if it does, that's a blessing to me, at least, that all the things that I've ever truly wanted have really come into my life using this work in the mystery school, especially the tools like Kabbalah that we have. And those seeds are like seeds of fire that burn up other things that stand in the way.
That's right.
That desire is this very passionate, fiery energy, and it's going to be expressed especially if we're doing this work in this lineage. That fire expresses itself, that passion expresses itself, that joy expresses itself, and it won't be able to be kept down forever. So
Yeah.
how does that bring us back to the heart? How is that for you? How is that really related to the heart? Why is the heart so essential?
Well, as you were talking, I remembered back in the day, I had this thing where I would always say, like, it is what it is. Like were what they were.
Yeah.
And I remember this guy
Toxic
that I was dating was
spirituality.
like, what do you say?
Toxic spirituality.
Yeah. Yeah. And it
Yeah.
wasn't even spirituality at the time. This is like pre-spirituality for me. It was just, that like things were what they were. And I was very rational and intellectual and intelligent and, very thinky. And yeah, I remember this guy I was dating was like, no, they're not. Things aren't just what they are. And I think, and the reason why I'm saying this, it comes back to the heart, because when I look back, I also realized how heavy my heart was back then. I really couldn't feel almost anything. And that's actually one of the main things that has changed for me throughout doing this work in the lineage, is being able to come back and feel inside of myself, to feel what's in my heart, because I couldn't. So of course, I couldn't live from it. I could only live from my mind and what I thought, and all these complicated realities that I built up in my mind, because I couldn't even access my heart. And I think that's even we're talking about it, but the reality is most people can't access their heart. There's so much, and rightfully so sometimes, because life isn't easy, and you can't unless you really cultivate it and you build up some inner qualities and have tools. It's really not that easy to walk around with a big open heart. So, that it comes in this dichotomy of, we're telling people, like an open heart equals, more easy change and access to change. But then how do we have these open hearts? How do we really feel what's inside of us without being bogged down by all the pain, all the suffering we've experienced, all the trauma
and
that
how do we feel safe?
How do we feel safe? That's right. How do we feel safe enough to feel? And how do we feel safe enough to really desire? How do we feel safe enough to say, I can desire something because I can have it? How do we feel safe enough to like take back our power and stop saying, I just give it to the universe, and recognize that this universe lives in my heart. This universe lives in me, and I can create this reality.
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah, that's again the power part. That's our power. And it is really easy to give that away, especially if we've been hurt,
That's right. And
because
who
it takes that responsibility away. Oh, well, look, it's over there.
That's right.
The universe delivered this to me. Okay? Is it what you really wanted?
Yeah.
Is it? Or did it
And
come from
again,
your base?
and again, the randomness, right? Do you want
Yeah.
to just always receive like some random thing out of the sky? Or do you want to be the creator? Do you want to be in control of yourself, right? And your life and your experiences?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Living in your own creations is amazing.
Yeah,
Living in a
it really
seemingly
is.
random situation. Yeah.
Which is what,
Until mystery school, a lot of people do live in relatively random levels of creation. And there's definitely a lot of work out there with, like, law of attraction and getting what you truly desire in life and creating your life. And that stuff is really, really, really good. But for a lot of people, they haven't cleaned their subconscious mind out enough to like a clean version of that.
that's right.
We kind of get the really grainy, dirty, staticky version of that because, yes, when you put your desires out to the universe does respond for
That's right.
sure, but it also has to go through the filter of your subconscious mind, and
That's
everything
right.
that's in your subconscious mind then becomes a part of your creation as well, because whether we like it or not, we're still responsible for what's down there. So because we have that responsibility, because we have that free will, the universe scans our desire and sees that and says, okay, great. Well, I'm going to produce everything that's in your mind for you. Not just what you say you want, but everything that you say you don't want, and everything that you are thinking about, and everything that you are dreaming about, and everything that was in your ancestors and your parents and your DNA. All that is going to manifest. And that's very confusing for us, because then we're getting all these things that they're noise.
Mm-hmm.
Within that spectrum of manifestation, we're getting a lot of noise.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't lead to an open heart for most people.
Right.
That most of the subconscious things are subconscious because they were painful.
That's right.
We put them down because we didn't know what to do with them. If we'd
That's
have
right.
known what to do with them, if they weren't painful, then we probably wouldn't have put them in the subconscious mind. We would have been in love and in joy with it, so there would be no need to stuff it down. So that means that when we're manifesting, we're trying to change and we're trying to keep our heart open, there's often, like, just too much in the way. Back to what you were saying a few minutes ago, there's just too much down in the subconscious for us to be in joy with the manifestation.
So then maybe the most important thing to change is our minds.
Maybe,
I mean, I was
maybe.
thinking about that a couple of days ago when I was contemplating this topic. I was like, one of the hardest and most important things to change are the ideologies that we hold on to. The ideas
Mm-hmm.
that we hold on to are really hard to change. But if we can change those, open up the concepts, bring the light in, like you're saying, what we
Mm-hmm.
see changes, what we see evolves, our perspective changes and opens up. And then it's what we hold in our minds that can change.
Mm-hmm.
What's Heather saying? Did you read
Oh,
it?
yeah. There's someone just saying, we met many years ago, and this healing work might be slick, might be quick, it might be slow. But I had mentioned to her one day, you'll see this life in a perspective of
Yeah,
change, rather
it's
than
true.
just here's the way it is. Like, it's fixed. You're in this house, you're in this relationship, you're doing this thing, you're doing this job, you have this family, but it's going to change. And then life activation, she's mentioning here, because that's that starting point of this new awareness of the possibilities of self change.
And
Life
maybe this is
activation.
another thing too, right? Like all of the change, when you focus on the light, change happens,
Mm-hmm.
which is basically what you were saying about perspective, but also when you focus on the light, because the light is related to your spirit, it does change your soul, then your change like starts to naturally happen in your life. And it may not be fireworks. It may seem very normal because again, our lives are outward expressions of our light.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe the way of dealing with that heart situation and the difficulty of really accessing the heart is focus on the light.
Mhm.
Focus on how you can change the quality. And this is why I like to talk about the soul signature and like having a soft heart, because if you focus on the quality of that light, then
Mhm.
you can access, those deeper truths. It's almost
Yeah.
like a back door. It's kind
Mhm.
of like getting into a back door of your mind.
Yeah. And focusing on the light can be really easy. It can be as simple as just meditating and
That's right.
visualizing light literally flowing into you. Not a complicated thing. I have like a 10-minute free meditation on my website. If you go to, my website and you click on meditation, there's just like free 10, 15-minute meditations for bringing in light,
Yeah,
focusing on light and imagining light flowing through you. It's not like some really complicated thing where it's only accessible if you're a mystery school initiate. Mystery
that's right.
school initiation makes it more accessible to you,
That's
but
right.
it's accessible to everyone all the time.
That's
And
right.
prayer is another way we can do that too. That's huge.
Prayer, let me tell you. Okay, so two things. One, when I need to change my mind, when I realize that I'm very bogged down and all I'm seeing is like kind of low level, and I say low, like in a literal level, like from my
Mhm.
eyes here, I look up. Sometimes I just have to remember
Mhm.
to look up at the sky to change
Mhm.
my orientation and remember that there's so much more than what is just right in front of me. And that's simple, but it's a change because then it changes my whole being, and then it allows me to change what I'm doing or how I'm relating to my life. um,
Mhm.
but there was something else you said that was really important. What did you say, the last thing? Do you remember?
Not sure.
Gosh.
Talking about healing, talking about
Healing, prayer,
prayer.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so the tool for change, and so is prayer. Let me tell you, I was raised Catholic, right? So I
Mhm.
have this relationship with prayer that is, I don't know, it's a bit awkward because when I go into prayer, I just automatically revert to the programming of how to pray, right?
Mhm.
So, and this is when I'm doing it consciously. But okay, this is going to blend a couple things. So I hope you guys can stay with me. The heart, prayer, change, conscious, unconscious, all
Mhm.
of it. When I was talking about those times, like being at the lowest of the low, on the floor, like in tears, talking to God, just going there,
Mhm.
what I found was that change happened immediately. I mean,
Mhm.
immediately. And what that taught me was when I pray from the depth of my soul, from my heart, right? That's when I can make change quickly and in a
Mhm.
divinely guided way, right?
Mhm.
This is important because for the most part, we pray from our minds. It's like
Mhm.
it's more of a mental conversation when, and this is also the willingness versus the unwillingness, because I've had to this is something I'm actively doing, but like practicing cracking myself open intentionally
Mhm.
because I had to resist so much to get to those painful points where I was cracked open unintentionally,
Mhm. Right.
right? To access
That's also
that, but
very hermetic and very Kabbalah to
it's very
intentionally
Kabbalistic.
resist. Yeah, and then intentionally crack open.
Yeah. How do you see it as the hermetic side of it? Because I can see the Kabbalistic part of it.
So our our experience of working with the hermetic principles. So we have the 7 hermetic principles, and some of them apply more directly here, specifically the principles of polarity and rhythm.
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
So when we want to experience something new, according to the principle of polarity, everything is existing on a spectrum. And our experience is located somewhere on a spectrum. And there's almost, let's say there's infinite spectrums,
Right.
all converging on a single point that's called your experience right now. So if you want to shift your experience right now in the multiverse of everything that exists, you polarize yourself on your spectrum. So you need light, you need awareness of where you are. If you don't know where you are, then you can't do this. You have to know where you are. And to know where you are, you have to know, according to Kabbalah, two other things. You have to know where you're coming from, and you have to know where you're going. And before you know those things, you have to know who you are and what you are. So we call those the 5 questions. Who am I? What am I? Where do I come from? Where am I going? And then finally, what is my purpose? Which is kind of like, where am I right now is my purpose. But if we don't know who and what we are, we can't really know where we come from. And then we can't really know where we're going. So we can't figure out our location. So let's just say we're Kabbalists. We're doing that work. And we have a sense of where we come from, and we have a sense of where we're going. Therefore, we know where we are. Once we know where we are, we can consciously polarize on that spectrum, and we can take the principle of rhythm that works with the principle of polarity, and we can say, well, if the rhythm is flowing in this direction, I can't fight the rhythm of the universe, but I'm going to flow it even harder in that direction, faster in that direction. I'm going to go with that flow of the universe all the way to the end of that spectrum of polarization. And then I'm going to snap back even faster to the center so that I spend less time in like the sort of whirly go around craziness of what's going on right now. And I get back to my center faster. So that's how that can be related to hermetics. All of that requires light.
Like
all of that requires knowing who we are.
It all requires. That's right.
Yeah.
I think let's talk about the spectrum a little bit more too, because that's actually, I wrote about that in my book. And I love that every time, like when I talk to people about it, even I learn something else about the spectrum and the way that we can use it and how it works. Oh wait, are you frozen?
Yeah. Am I? I don't know. I don't look frozen on my end, but that's because I'm on my end.
It just lasted for 1 second. But yeah. Okay. So the reason why I wanted to talk about the spectrum is because, again, when we talk about change, and sometimes the change can seem like we're going into the unknown, but along the spectrum, everything already exists. So even the ways that we can change in our futures, those potentials already exist.
Right.
So how are we bringing in the light to be more conscious about what potentials we access?
Yeah.
So whether it's moving along the spectrum or evolving through healing, we're accessing potentials. And I think even if we think about it that way, it might make change a bit less intimidating. Like I'm accessing potential.
And that's where Kabbalah comes in a huge way, because Kabbalah and working with the tree of life is a map. And when you know the whole map, then you can see the whole territory. So once you've completed those keys and you've completed that map inside yourself, at least once, going up the tree of life, ascending and sort of essentially being initiated, if you will, into the tree of life, then the whole map is activated. When you can look at the map from above and see it, and you're like, oh, I get it. That's where everything is. That's where my mind is. And this is what I want to do with that. Then a lot of other things open up, because we're not just trapped in linear consciousness of like, here's where I am today.
That's right.
We have this whole multidimensional consciousness of like, here's where I am, and here's where I've been, and here's where I can go. And there's these 10 major archetypes of possibility, and there's these 22 pathways of change and possibility, and these 231 gateways of choices in every moment to make a change, to do something differently. And it's something you can study, but you can study it all your life and not have it open up for you.
To experience it.
You can be initiated into it, and then it's active in you for the rest of existence. And now you can navigate that map. So yeah, I mean, maps are essential if we want to see the big picture all the time. You get so much out of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But even having that experience and being able to see that map again, like you're bringing more light into your reality, and making, how can I say, I just keep thinking about this way of making change less intimidating, in the way that you're talking about, right? Like all of these potentials, all of these gateways, everything that we experience as we are initiated into the Kabbalistic system. I don't know if system is the right word, but once you have done it and you really, it's in you,
right?
You know that you can you can access a change, you can go through a change, but you know what? You can change again.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay too. So then,
Yeah.
that also comes, I think that's like the soft heart part, right? Like understanding that like you can keep changing. That's
Mm-hmm.
okay. Small change, big change. Life is meant to be experienced and lived through all of these different potentials, which we experience through the Kabbalistic system. And it becomes almost like more enjoyable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And that the heart of that flame in the heart, that desire in the heart, the things that we most want, you know, those things, to see all of it, to see my whole life, to see all the parts of my life, like every year, I go through and I revision my whole life at least once or twice a year.
Mm-hmm.
And that is such a powerful practice, whether you're doing mystery school work or not, to not like I write lists, I create vision boards, I put serious prayer and intention every single day, twice a day, into these areas of my life because I don't want a randomly created life. But I have to have the light enough to know that these are the things I really want
That's right.
because we are powerful. And if I'm asking for these things and I don't really want them, what the heck am I doing? Like I'd be creating a life I don't want. And the refinement process there is always ongoing.
Mm-hmm.
And the heart is how I listen to it. How does it feel?
Mm-hmm.
How
Mm-hmm.
does this life that I have feel? And my life right now feels like joy, bliss, incredibleness, if that's a feeling. Um, so all of that comes from intentional creation for the last, I got initiated in 2005, so 17 years. Been doing Kabbalah since 2006, so 16 years of Kabbalah now. So all those things I'm always putting an intention out from my heart, from that spark of desire, and I get it back and I go, okay, how does that feel?
Mm-hmm.
Is that what I really most wanted? And
Mm-hmm.
there's always an upgrade. Every year there's always an upgrade. Something else comes in and I change that. So we're getting
And
close to the end of our time here. So I want to hear your final words and thoughts on all of this.
oh wait, oh, okay.
I
Well, I
mean,
was
we have
gonna
a
ask,
few minutes.
huh?
We have a few minutes, so.
Okay, because I was going to ask. Oh, first of all, I'm doing the same thing right now. Like I created, a vision for
Mhm,
all aspects of my life, and I just realized I'm like, okay, I'm going to change this now.
mhm,
It's time to change it. So I'm actually also working on changing mine, which is not for any particular year. It's just I know that it's time to change it. But what I
mhm,
want to ask you is, we're talking about desire and allowing yourself to feel desire, and I didn't always feel my own desire.
mhm,
And it's not only been an evolving process, but it's one that actually doing the Kabbalah program has really helped me to tap into, and in a
mhm,
ways that when I felt it, I was like, oh, that's it. This is what it feels like to really feel that passion, that desire, and to really go for it without having to talk myself into it. And
mm,
I think some of that comes from, in this way, I'm thinking about like the people out in the world in general who are listening to us and who, haven't been on this path for as long as, you've been on it longer than me, or haven't really got into healing. They're still, seeking and working towards being able to take control of their lives. And I'm thinking about where self-worth comes in,
hmm,
feeling like you're worthy of what you
yeah,
desire. If things have gone against you in your
mm,
life, if it's not that easy for you to just say, I'm going to sit down and make all these lists, maybe I don't know, you're kind of like neurodivergent and you're not a list person. If
mhm,
there's things that in your reality you
mhm.
feel work against you, how do we support those people in being able to access that feeling of I can too?
For sure. I mean, that took me 5 years of Kabbalah just to start asking,
Hmm.
or 4 rounds of Kabbalah. I guess maybe by my 4th round I was asking, but I didn't even believe that I was truly a good person. So, the self-worth I had when I first found mystery school was, like, in the toilet. I thought it was great, but it was in the toilet.
Hmm.
I was like, "Yeah, I love myself. I'm good. I'm really great. I mean, everything in my life is broken, but I'm great." So,
Right.
which is true on an essence level. We are amazing, divine, eternal, infinite beings of light, but like there's also the human level where I was really, really not doing so great. In my inner world was not illuminated the way I would have wanted it to be, or the way I even imagined that it was. You know, I had a vision of myself that didn't really match reality. I had
Yeah.
a vision of myself that was like trying to cope with the pain that I was in, and trying to put it into compartments and boxes and deal with this part here and deal with that part there. And then Kabbalah just sort of broke me open to, no, all of you is actually one thing. Like you are a unity, and you can't just put yourself in boxes anymore, and you can't limit yourself, and you can't put your dreams on hold, and you can't put your healing on hold, and you can't put your family on hold. You gotta face yourself. And you know, I spent that whole first year sort of scurrying around, realizing that the all the ways that I had figured out to cope with my life had at least some flaws. And just facing that I needed to restructure my whole inner world and mind was, you know, that took me the whole first year of Kabbalah. And
Mm.
then I jumped back into Kabbalah again the next time it was offered a few months later, whatever it was, like 4 or 6 months later, and I did it again, but this time I knew a little bit more about what to ask for. I still couldn't bring myself to really set strong goals other than a few things like I wanna be a healer, I wanna be healthy, I want good relationships, but I didn't feel like that was even possible. I was very disillusioned with all of those things in my life at that time. I had been very sick for several years. I had tried a healing practice twice and failed. Like, I just couldn't even pay my bills, couldn't even sustain seeing clients, like, wasn't working in my life. And then the relationships I was having were like super roller coaster all over the place. Sometimes really good, sometimes get out of my life. I don't want to see you. And I had to face like, oh, well, I'm creating all of that. And took a couple of years to start to heal enough within myself to realize um, what I even wanted,
Mm.
and that maybe the things I was asking for, I was going about it in ways that were not as effective as they could be, and I could do things. I could operate from a whole new level. Kabbalah set me free to operate in a new way in my life, and without knowing without knowing the pieces of me that were in pain, I couldn't face the pieces of me that were in joy.
Mm.
So I had to see a lot of stuff that was painful and hard and say, okay, well, I don't want that anymore. And I had to tell myself the truth about it, because until I told myself the truth, it kept happening. It kept happening. I couldn't make the right change until I got really real. And then I could finally, so I had to feel in my heart, like, this is what I'm creating. I'm bringing in these experiences I'm creating this pain. It's not my girlfriend, it's not my family. Like, yeah, they are in pain also, but I'm the one who's letting that in. I'm the one who's saying yes to it in my life. I'm the one who's choosing to surround myself with these people. I could do something differently, but I'm not. So why? And facing that pain, and that I'm the person who's really responsible for it ultimately, gave me the freedom to say, I don't want to do this anymore. And then I had to, you know, submit that request to the universe through my intention, through my prayer, through my falling apart on the floor and crying for a day straight, many, many times, or at least 4 hours straight. Sometimes, you know, just literally like lying on my floor by my desk, just like crying for hours to the universe and to God, like, I need something different. This has to change.
Yeah.
And that was like 2006, 2007, 2008, just constantly kind of going through those cycles every few months of realizing like, oh, this thing is broken. I have to do it differently. And then, you know, 3 to 6 months later, like, oh, this thing is also broken. I have to do that differently. And that was like kind of like 5 years of 2005, 2010, really moving through a lot of waves of um, seeing what's not working, and seeing now that I know it's not working, what do I really want? And that's all it's all about, opening my heart to myself
Hmm.
before I could open it up and really serve other people.
Which is when you were mentioning the Healers Academy before, that's what I thought to myself. Was like the most beautiful thing is that you really open up to yourself in that process.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wasn't even ready for that. I was just like, no, I have so many problems that I have to deal with, and everyone has their own path to dealing with their problems, but I chose to really face a lot of stuff before I felt like I was worthy to um, go serve somebody else. And I had to, close my healing practice for several years and go start other businesses and go work, in corporate for a year because I needed some other way to sustain myself and to like participate in life that wasn't being a healer, that wasn't trying to help other people in a direct, service kind of sense, but was serving myself first and still, always being a good person. We're good people at our core, but are we always ready in our hearts to serve? Like that's kind of between us and the universe.
Right.
The universe will show us like here's where we're at. If we're humble, if we're willing to listen. And if we're not humble, then the universe will kind of, maybe do us a favor and show us how to become humble,
Yeah.
said in a very kind, nice way.
Right. With a chuckle.
Yeah, cool. Any last words of wisdom for our viewers here and then our viewers for the future who see this not live?
Yes. I find that the most practical, relatable, accessible way to start to practice change is through breath work. And I don't
Mm,
mean not intense breath work, but simply by breathing. Because, through the day when you're thinking, when you're doing all these things, you actually get out of your breath. This is a whole different direction, but it really does fit. So you really get out of conscious breathing. But if you sit and focus on your breath for a little while, you will notice that things in you start to change. And I find that like that awareness of like, oh wow, I feel different, or my body feels different, or I'm breathing differently, or I'm thinking differently now. To me, that plants the seed of the potential and the opportunity to change in ways that we don't really think, we don't think are, I don't know, maybe as big because it's something small, but it's basically a seed. Is what I'm trying to say. So for anybody listening who, thinks that, I don't know, just the big ideas and maybe you have something going on in your life that you want to change, but it seems grand, start with your breath.
mhm,
Even if it's when you're thinking about that big thing or when you're not thinking about that the big thing, just focus changing how you feel inside. Focus on changing the way you are relating to your physicality, the way you're relating to the most primal thing that gives you the opportunity to live, which is your breath.
mhm,
And then you'll start to feel that ease. Then you'll start to really be able to access some things in your heart, you know, and not necessarily the painful ones, but just the pulsing, beating heartbeat that's inside of you, and let that guide you forward into really finding your truth in your life.
yeah. It's great advice. Yeah, it's not an accident that the heart is that flame that's surrounded by the air in your lungs physically. Mm,
Right.
amazing. Thanks so much, Siapa.
Yeah,
Really
thanks for having me.
appreciate you coming on the show today. I hope everyone enjoyed it. We've got lots of things I haven't even published here, lots of great comments. So if your comments didn't get published, we still love you. Just wasn't able to squeeze them into our show. So
I'd love to see them. Or is there a way that, like, do you save them?
sure, yeah, you and I can hop on after, and we'll stay in the studio after we end our live. So wonderful. Well, we love you all. Have a great day if you're watching this today, and if you're watching this later, I hope you also have a great day. So take care, everyone.